You're 35. You approve amendments that redirect federal money without changing a single headline. The title still sounds honorable when people say it out loud. Senator. It carries weight in rooms with polished wood and controlled air. Staffers lower their voices when you enter. Lobbyists wait 5 extra seconds before speaking, just long enough to signal respect. You built that presence carefully. You were a policy analyst before you ran for office. You understood regulatory frameworks, trade law, the mechanics of federal grants. You knew how to read a 600-page appropriations bill without losing the thread. That's why the party backed you. You were efficient, predictable, useful. The system needs people like you, not loud ones, not reckless ones, people who understand process. The money never arrives labeled. It moves through layered entities. A transportation advocacy nonprofit funds a political action committee. The PAC donates to your campaign and several others on your committee. The nonprofit receives membership contributions from a freight consolidation firm operating along the Southern Corridor. The firm holds contracts with customs brokers who specialize in expedited clearance. You sit on the subcommittee that revised clearance thresholds last year. The revision was technical. It shifted inspection ratios from fixed percentages to risk-weighted algorithms. On paper, it was modernization. In practice, it reduced physical inspections at 3 ports where the freight firm holds dominant contracts. You defended the change in a hearing. You cited economic projections. No one challenged the data. Within 8 months, your campaign debt was gone. Within a year, you were positioned as a rising voice on trade reform. Party leadership praised your data-driven governance. You told yourself the alignment was coincidental. The crack forms quietly. A federal audit flags a surge in misdeclared cargo linked to one of the expedited brokers. Not narcotics, not weapons, just tariff discrepancies. Still illegal, still federal. You receive a closed-door briefing. Analysts present charts. The anomaly clusters around the same ports that benefited from your regulatory adjustment. No one looks at you directly, but you feel the geometry tightening. You ask controlled questions. Are the discrepancies systemic? Are other ports experiencing similar variances? Is there evidence of internal corruption? The analysts answer cautiously. It's early. Patterns, not proof. You leave the briefing composed. You return to your office and close the door. You remember the first private dinner. It wasn't in a back room. It was at a public restaurant near the Capitol. 3 executives, 1 former regulator now acting as compliance advisor. They talked about congestion, supply chains, the need for predictable oversight. No one mentioned contraband. No one mentioned cartels. But you knew their market share depended on speed, and you knew speed reduces scrutiny. 2 weeks after the audit briefing, a regional news outlet publishes a short piece about increased cargo discrepancies in southern ports. It's buried below election coverage. Still, it names the freight consolidation firm. Your communications director drafts a statement emphasizing your commitment to transparency and lawful trade. You approve it with minor edits. You add a sentence about supporting federal audits. Support is easy when audits don't reach you. The next pressure point arrives through finance. Your campaign treasurer informs you that a large donor, connected indirectly to the nonprofit, has requested a private meeting, not about policy, about long-term alignment. You consider declining. Declining signals distance. Distance invites questions. You accept. The meeting is in a glass conference room overlooking the river. The donor speaks calmly. He references infrastructure investments, future trade corridors, political stability. Then he says something precise. We value consistency. Not loyalty, not protection, consistency. You understand the word as a warning. You leave without making promises. You don't need to. Your voting record already communicates enough. At night, sleep becomes fragmented. You start reviewing your calendar history, every meeting, every call. You categorize them, official, semi-official, unofficial. You look for exposure points. Your counsel reassures you. No direct transfers, no personal enrichment beyond campaign funds, no recorded quid pro quo. He says you're insulated. Insulated isn't the same as clean. A month later, a mid-level customs supervisor is arrested for accepting bribes to override inspection flags. This time, narcotics are involved. The quantities are significant. The port is one you helped modernize. Reporters begin connecting stories, audit discrepancies, arrested officials, reduced inspections, campaign donations. Your name appears again, not accused, contextualized. You feel the shift in tone. In committee hearings, colleagues ask sharper questions, not about you, about the system. Still, you hear the edge. You respond with technical precision. You cite enforcement budgets. You highlight bipartisan initiatives. You propose expanding digital tracking tools. Expanding digital tracking tools increases efficiency further. You notice the irony. Your spouse asks why you're working later. You say the legislative calendar is intense. It is. That's not the full answer. You've stopped discussing work at home entirely. Isolation feels safer. The investigative pressure escalates when a nonprofit watchdog files a formal complaint alleging regulatory capture within your subcommittee. They request a review of communications between your office and the freight nonprofit. You know those communications exist. They are careful, sanitized, policy-oriented. Still, context matters. You instruct your staff to preserve everything. No deletions, no retroactive edits. Transparency is protection when concealment can be criminal. You begin thinking in legal thresholds. What constitutes conspiracy? What defines material support? Where does negligence become complicity? You research case law late at night. You learn that ignorance is only defensible when it's reasonable. Was yours reasonable? The cartel never approached you directly. That remains true. Their presence is inferred through financial webs and enforcement reports. But you read intelligence briefings. You know how synthetic opioids move. You know how shell logistics firms mask origin points. You voted to streamline the very checkpoints that intercept them. The party leadership calls you in. They're not accusatory, they're pragmatic. The optics are deteriorating. They suggest you sponsor a comprehensive anti-trafficking package, increase penalties, expand DEA funding, publicly distance yourself from specific industry actors. You agree. You draft the bill meticulously. Strong language, zero tolerance, mandatory reporting requirements for brokers. The freight nonprofit releases a neutral statement supporting balanced enforcement. Balanced. You sense the temperature dropping slightly. Then, a former employee of the freight firm agrees to speak anonymously to a national outlet. He claims internal pressure to prioritize speed over compliance. He doesn't mention you. He doesn't need to. The article includes a timeline, regulatory change, throughput spike, donation surge. The pattern becomes visible. You spend an evening alone in your office reviewing the first campaign finance report that listed the nonprofit's contribution. You remember the relief you felt seeing your deficit erased, the sense of momentum. You told yourself it was normal. Industries support aligned policymakers. That's how the system functions. It does. But some industries are built on violence, 2 layers removed from spreadsheets. Your chief of staff suggests a listening tour. Town halls, direct engagement, visibility reframes narratives. You comply. At a town hall, a woman asks about overdose deaths in her county. She doesn't accuse you. She asks what Washington is doing to stop the flow. You answer with policy language, funding increases, interagency coordination, border technology upgrades. Your voice is steady. Inside, you calculate inspection ratios. Weeks later, the Ethics Committee opens a preliminary review. Routine, they say.
standard procedure when formal complaints are filed. You cooperate fully. You provide disclosures, meeting logs, policy drafts. You do not provide intent. Intent can't be documented cleanly. Sleep deteriorates further. You wake before dawn and review headlines compulsively. You start noticing patterns in parked cars, in unfamiliar faces at public events. Maybe it's paranoia. Maybe it's pattern recognition. You reduce private contact with donors. You diversify funding aggressively. Healthcare, renewable energy, small business coalitions. It looks strategic. It feels defensive. The Ethics Committee concludes there's insufficient evidence of wrongdoing, no explicit exchanges, no personal enrichment, policy decisions supported by documented studies. Legally, you remain intact. Publicly, the story fades. Privately, something fractures. You realize your survival depends on maintaining the architecture. If you suddenly reverse course, reimpose stricter inspections, publicly condemn the freight consortium, you invite scrutiny into why you supported them so strongly before. Consistency protects you. Consistency binds you. You review a new proposal to further automate cargo risk scoring using private sector data integration. It promises cost savings, reduced backlog, enhanced predictive analytics. You understand who will benefit. You also understand that rejecting it now would stand out. You sign. Not because anyone forced you, not because you're threatened, because exposure risk outweighs moral recalibration. Months pass. You rise in party ranks. You're mentioned as a potential committee chair. The freight nonprofit's donations taper slightly, replaced by other aligned groups. The web expands. It always does. You study intelligence briefings on cartel adaptation, new shell companies, new transit routes, new brokers. Different names, same structure. You see clearly that you were never central. You were a facilitator within a much larger system. If you stepped away, someone else would occupy the seat. That realization doesn't absolve you. It just reduces you to scale. You're 35. You operate within legality while skirting proximity to criminal enterprise. You haven't been indicted. You haven't confessed. You've optimized a system that functions whether you acknowledge its shadows or not. Tonight, the office is quiet. The city hums below your window. Your name still carries respect in public halls. You understand exactly how fragile that respect is. You survive by remaining useful. You remain useful by staying consistent. And consistency has a cost you calculate alone.